Migrating to Streamtime. I'm Molly and this is Brooke, and we are from the customer success team in Australia. Before we jump into it today, just a little bit of housekeeping. We've got the chat on the right side, so say hello, where you're from, and if you have any questions, pop them in there, and I'll monitor the chat while Brooke leads us through, and hopefully we can answer some of your questions as we go along.
Perfect. Is my sound okay? I can hear an echo on my side.
No,
we're not getting that. Okay, cool. All right. So we have run this webinar in the past, and we can share a link to that webinar because we're basically going to do the same as we did last time, but we're going to highlight some of the differences that have come about from the introduction of the new job page, which I'm very excited to be using today. So I am the success and adoption lead here at Streamtime, and I have onboarded many customers to Streamtime. I have also implemented Streamtime in agency before I joined the dark side, or the light side, if you will. So I have been through this process myself many times. And I think that before we even start to talk about how we bring our jobs into Streamtime, I think there is a piece that comes first, which is about figuring out what we want to put into Streamtime and the level of kind of data fidelity that we want on our live jobs that we're bringing over from our existing tool. So we want to think about how much time and effort we're willing or we want to put into it, but also what data we want to get out once the job is complete and how we want to ladder that up to whatever data is coming out of our previous tool. So I'm going to show you a method that's kind of worked for me in the past, but there is no one-size-fits-all approach for this. I'm going to show you 3 different methods to do it. I usually use a combination of the 3. We've found that works well for us and our customers. So we will take you through it. Cool. Ask any questions as you go. I'm going to share my screen. It's that weird time of year where it's really cold outside. You make the house really warm and then suddenly you're too hot. So I feel myself kind of overheating. All right. So you can see my screen time, my screen time here, my stream time here. I'm going to show you the second tab first, right? So what you're bringing out of your existing tool might look something like this. So you might have a bunch of job numbers, your clients, the job names, and the things that are really important when you're migrating across to Streamtime are the total budget for the job. So what's the approved fee? And then basically how much time have you used to date? Because those are the 2 things that you're going to want to reflect in Streamtime. So you might also have something that looks like this, which is just all of the time data that came from your previous tool. If you do, I would recommend for each job, totaling up the total cost that's been spent on time and the total sell that's been spent on time, as well as an average cost rate, which is the total number of hours, total cost divided by the total number of hours, total sell divided by the total number of hours. And that's what we're going to plug in to Streamtime in just a moment. I would also recommend taking your list of live jobs, and it depends how many you have, right? I've seen customers that have hundreds, I've seen customers that have 10. But the 3 categories that I usually split them into are these ones. So I will have A, which is recently signed. So this is anything that's essentially like brand new. Maybe you spent a tiny little bit of time on it, but you really want to run the job through Streamtime in its entirety. And it's in that sort of first phase, well, it's just been kicked off, or it's due to kick off soon. Second one would be mid-project or earlier, which is exactly what it says on the tin. So just, are you halfway through or earlier? And then the other one would be nearly complete. So usually what I do is I'd go through and I categorize all of the jobs in a spreadsheet like this, just literally have a look at it, what you know of it, what your team knows of it, and give it a category. So that then you're starting with your kind of checklist on the side that you can work through, and each job as you add it into Streamtime, you can mark it as being complete. or whatever the case may be. Right, so that's that. I'm going to talk to the types in just a second. Regardless of which type it is, I would recommend starting with a couple of master items or setting up a couple of master items, and they are these ones here. So the first one is total approved budget at YMMDD, however you like to write your dates. And then I usually put in the description here of the master item a little prompt for my team to insert a link to the initial quote, wherever that lives, so that there's a reference of it. And the two jobs, the one in Streamtime and the existing one in the previous tool, are linked to each other. I set this one up as a fixed price item, and then you're not going to track any time against it, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose here, but by default, I always choose team member sell rate. And sometimes I've had customers elect to map this to a distinct revenue account in Xero, so that if it does get passed through on an invoice, it's really easy to pick it up and identify that it's not meant to be there. But if not, you can just leave that as default. If you're not integrated with Xero, don't even have to worry about it. So that's what the first one looks like. Second one looks like this. Where have we got? Time spent today. It's like we just had it. Oh, no, sorry, that's an expense. Sorry. So the other master item I usually add at this stage is this one here. This is appropriate for type C, which I'll show you in a second. So basically, I just do the job number, the job name, and the company name. I set this one as fixed price, and I set it as team member sell rate as well. Don't need to put anything else in here. If you want to put a link, you can. But this is just for our jobs that are like nearly finished, where we've got a tiny bit of time left. So I think it's usually all right to keep this one pretty light. Now, the expense. So I really tripped myself up there for a second. So this is also pretty important. So I use this format, time spent to date, as at, same as the project fee. And then I put those details into the description here that I showed you before in the spreadsheet. So I usually put the total time spent to date in hours, the total, that approximate cost rate, so that blended rate that I had worked out here. I'll usually jot that down there, depending on what I need. The total cost that's been spent, the total sell, same again, and then the URL. I will actually just paste this description right into the chat, so that if you would like to use it as well, you can. And this one, I will create a company called Streamtime Internal, or your company name internal, and I add that as a supplier to this expense, again, for that same reason, so that if it gets passed through to my accounting package, we can see that it's actually an internal expense. Okay, let's get into setting up our jobs. So we've got those three things set up here. When you're onboarding with us, we will recommend that you have a look at your template jobs, which we have a whole webinar on as well, but your template jobs and your job migration at the same time, because they usually, one's going to help the other. So the first thing that I would do, if I haven't set up a standard job template, is have a look at that and set that up. So this is the example I'm using here for that, my brand identity template. And I would also set up a template, something like this. This is for type B, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. But what it's basically going to have on it is phases. These can be empty, or they can have dummy items in there. The expense, the one that I just created in my master items. So I'm going to delete this. If you're starting with a blank job, none of this will be here. You'll just add your expense right from the top there. But when we're typing and then we're selecting from the drop-down menu, we are making sure that we're pulling through the expense that we've just created in our master settings. So you can see that all of that detail that I just put up is already pulled through to this expense. The other thing I would do is, if you are migrating all of your jobs as at a certain date. So let's say, for example, Molly and I have been using Workflow Max, and we're going to pull the time data from Workflow Max as at tomorrow, the end of the week, and then from Monday, we're going to be using Streamtime for real. We can set that date on the master expense to tomorrow's date so that we're not having to update it on every job. So you don't have to use that date reference. You can use tomorrow's date. Hopefully that will make a little more sense when I show you an example, but basically it might look like that. Okay, I'm going to save that there. Let's jump into type A. So if we imagine that type A is jobs that have recently been signed, we kind of want to treat them like a new job in Streamtime, but we are going to be working from an existing scope. So if I wanted to bring a brand identity into Streamtime and I've got my brand identity template set up, again, you'll see me explain how I built this template out in the templates webinar. But I would basically duplicate this in the way that I would to create any new job from a template. So I would come in here and duplicate the job. I would give it a name matching the existing job name. And so that would be me pulling through from my list here. Let's imagine that it's this one, right? Oh, yep, this window, yep. Okay, cool. So I'm going to create a brand identity for the Chicago Bulls. I'm going to give it the job number to match the job number that it has in my existing system. I'm going to make sure the rate card is correct to what it was quoted in, whichever rate card I used previously, the rates that I used previously. And I'm going to hit continue. Choose which parts of the job I want to bring over. And you might have heard me say this before, but if you're not sure, I say just bring everything, because you can always delete it if you don't need it. But if you don't bring it, then you don't have it. So I bring everything. And then if I have a timeline attached to the job, which I usually do with a template job, I will backdate the job to the date that it kicked off. So I'm going to imagine that this one kicked off a couple of weeks ago on the 26th of May. So I'm going to backdate that there, hit create and plan. And right away, I have got a fresh job here that has everything in it that I've quoted to the client, to the Chicago Bulls. Now, I'd already added this expense in here. If you haven't, let's imagine that you're starting without it. I was prepping for the webinar, so you probably wouldn't have it at this stage. The easiest way to do this, if you don't want to plan out all of the hours exactly as they would be, and you haven't done that on your template already, is to change all of these existing items on the template to fixed price. Now, the benefit of doing this is that you can just work straight down from your existing quote and add them in exactly as they are. So I think I might have I've actually already done this one. So I'll flip over to the job that I've created, but you can imagine that what I'm going to be doing here is just going down and updating the amounts. So say this was actually 5,400 and this was actually 500 on this particular job. We didn't have any brand positioning. I can go ahead and delete that and just sort of make any updates that I need to make this match to the quote that I've already prepared for the client. So like I said, this one's very similar to how you would set up any job in Streamtime. The only difference is going to be that you're going to go ahead and create your quote. Now, creating a quote on jobs that you're migrating from another tool might not seem super important because you've already created a job and shared it to the quote and shared it with the client and they've approved it. But it is really important to Streamtime to make sure that we are setting the budget correctly on the job. So we are going to kind of recreate it here. And the amount of detail that you include in this quote really depends on whether you're going to raise your invoices from Streamtime for this particular job, or you're going to raise them from the previous tool, or you've already got them set up. So if you're going to raise them from Streamtime, then you really want to get the quote looking as close to how you would want the invoice looking in Streamtime, because you're going to raise the invoice from this quote. So again, we have resources on how to adjust your quotes, which we can share. Please do let us know if you want to see those. but I'm going to go ahead and update that. Again, I would backdate this quote to when it was issued, like this. Sometimes I'll put a reference to the quote that was shared with the client in here, the URL like I showed you on the master item. Sometimes I'll leave it. That introduction can be brought through to the invoice, so that can be helpful if you want to share that with your client at a later date. But I basically get this looking how I want my invoice to look. I backdate it. I would update the quote number to reference, just hit back on that when I should have hit create. Oh no, here we go. Yeah, okay, sorry. I would update the quote number there if I needed to. I've backdated it, and then I would just go ahead and approve it manually. When we approve a quote in Streamtime, what it's going to do is set the budget. So we jumped back to my, sorry about that. Maybe log this afterwards. Okay, cool. Sorry, we're back. So when I go ahead and approve that quote, what it's going to do is set the budget on this job to match the total of the quote. And this then becomes a fixed field. So I'm not able to edit it accidentally. And immediately my pulse check and everything else is going to start laddering up to that total on this job. Now, if we imagine that a couple of these items have already been complete. So let's say that the briefing and workshop were delivered before we came across to Streamtime. So date 12th of June today. So say we're around here in the initial sprint and these two things have already been delivered. What I'm going to want to do is add an expense and it is going to be my time spent to date expense. And I'm going to go ahead and update the date there. So we said that's going to be tomorrow. Now, this is one of the things that we weren't able to do before we've got the new job page, which I'm really excited about. So we're going to go ahead and key in the amount that's been used from our previous tool. Sorry, I've got that written down on the side. So one thing that's great is that we're able to just key in those two figures immediately, right away. We're going to be able to see the markup on the time. If we want to go to that extra level of detail, we can open the expense up here and edit it there. Put a link to the full list of the time data and all the rest of it. But if we don't want to, we can just change the date, change the name, change the amount, and mark it as approved, all from the job plan. The other thing we can do is go ahead and move this expense up into the phase that it relates to. So, for example, briefing and workshops already completed, and that is the time that is spent here, relates to these two tasks here. I can go ahead and drag this up here. And then what I want to do is set the cell on these items to 0. Because the used cell is already being accounted for here on the expense. I've just realized I'm meant to be finished and I'm not. I'm going to keep going. Is that all right with you, Molly?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So the total cell here is captured by this expense that's capturing the time spent to date. So we don't want to count it twice by having the totals mapped out against the items as well, if we're not tracking time against those items. So instead, what we'll do is just mark those items as complete, set the cell to 0, and have the expense represent that instead. The reason why it was important to bring those totals in initially is, as I said, so that they're on the quote there, and I can go ahead and raise an invoice to the client for those amounts if I need to down the track. And then I am able to see how I'm tracking up towards my total plan cell, sorry, my total budget, and how much of my total budget I've already used. So that is method A. Any questions about that, Molly? Did that make sense?
Nothing's come through, no?
Okay, cool. So what I would recommend doing is adding a job label to this that gives it that A, recently signed type, so that you can pull all of those jobs at once later if you need to. The other thing I would do is on this expense, the time spent to date, I usually add a label here, which is either something like time spent to date or migrated from XYZ tool. So migrated from Workflow Max or whatever the case may be. Again, this is so that I can pull all the time spent to date and all the time that was migrated from the previous tool in one go. If you're new to Streamtime, you might not be sure why it might not be clear why I'm doing this, but please trust us. Add the label and you will thank us later, because it's really going to help you when you come to reporting on jobs at the end of the year or quarter, filtering that use time in and out. So that is method A. All right. Method B, they get way more simple from here. So method A is essentially build the job out in full. Method B, so we're going to start with our B template, or we can start with a blank job. I might show you how that goes so that you're not getting, it's not too, here's one I prepared earlier. But basically, let's imagine that I have this job here. It is brand evolution and design development. I'm going to go ahead and grab the job name and I'm going to type in the client, which I believe we said was going to be the Brooklyn Nets. I'm going to give it that job number that it already has in my historical time data sheet. So this is when we're starting from with an absolutely blank job. So we've just clicked create job. Again, check that your rate cards, PO number, contacts, all the rest of it line up. Then we're going to go create and plan. And we are going to get a blank empty job. Right. So this is probably more realistic to what most people are starting with. So first thing we're going to do is add in an item for our budget from that master item that I created earlier. So I just click new item, or I can click create item up there, or I can click add item down here, wherever works for you. I'm going to put a link, the URL to the previously approved quote here in the description. And then this is a fixed price item. I am going to go ahead and key the entire project fee in here. So we are imagining this is 129,000 brand evolution and design development. What a dream. We love it. The next thing I'm going to do is add in my time spent to date. So as I said before, this is my type B, mid-project or earlier. So we're going to imagine that a huge chunk of the budget has already been used. Maybe it's around half of the budget has already been used. We're going to assume all of the invoices have been created elsewhere, and they're going to be shared with the client from there. What I want to do is just create a job where I can map out the remainder of the hours on this job and plan them out using the remainder of the budget. So I've got my 129K, that's my budget. I can add in more detail if I want to, and then I'm immediately going to add in my time spent to date expense. Again, we're going to update that to the date. For now, I'm just going to key in the amount. So let's imagine we've spent 36,000 in cost, and that equates to a sell rate of 43,750. Once I've got those two things in the job, so the one item for the budget and the one item for the expense, I'm going to go ahead and make the quote straight away. So I'm just going to bring those two items onto the quote, hit create and edit. And here, what I'm going to do is, I can get rid of my heading groups. Actually, I can just use my line items, depends your preference. All I'm going to do is, instead of this amount of cell that has been used being a positive number, I'm going to make it a negative number. So I'm going to deduct it from the total budget, which gives me my remaining 85K that I have to spend and plan time with. That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and backdate this as I did with the other one. I'm going to mark it as approved. Again, I would put a label on this. I put a label on everything, just in case. But you can see now that I have approved that quote. I've got my remaining budget there for me to work with. Now, I would then set this item to be non-billable so that it's not factoring into my planned sell for the job. Actually, yeah, I do want to do that. Yeah. And then I want to, and then I can clear, oh, I've tripped myself up, haven't I? I can leave that as billable. And then I just start planning out my items, sorry. So I would have a new phase, and it's just the remaining deliverables that are in play on this job. So I don't have to build out all the items if I don't want to. I can just build out the remaining items. Would recommend setting up your master items first so that you're able to pull for them from the list, as I'm doing here. But let's imagine that this job is a series of sprints. We've done sprint 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to start in Streamtime from sprint 4. I can go ahead and plan out the rest of the sprints like this. I think I can also just, new job page. I can just keep tabbing through the fields, which is amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my sprints. I can set them up as fixed price items. So again, I'm able to just key in the amount for each one like this. And then I can go ahead and add my team members in. So let's say it's me, Jake, and Molly. They're going to be working on this job. I can start to plan out the hours that I'm expecting for each one in the same way that I would for any other job in Streamtime. And I can see how I'm tracking up to that overall budget. So I can see that this is now sending it right over the edge. These figures are not real, but you get the idea. So this kind of gives me a balance where I have half of the job that's built out and half of the job that's captured by the overall budget and the expense. Again, we'll put the article in chat so it'll be super clear. Last one. Oh my gosh, I'm only 2 minutes over. Okay. Last type is type C. Now, these are your jobs that are just nearly finished. They might just have like a little bit of time. Like say you've got like, $120 left on a job and you need that for an hour of someone's time or something like that. The way that I would recommend setting up these jobs is I would take all of the jobs that you have set to be type C from your previous tool, and I would use one job in Streamtime to capture them all. And so I would call it something like live jobs migrated from XYZ tool. And this is where that third master item that I created comes in. So I'll show you what it looks like before we add anything in, or I'll create a phase and hide these ones away. So we're going to put all of these in here. I'm just going to start with that blank one. Perfect. All right. Yep. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Okay. So you are going to go ahead and add an item, and it is going to be the one that you just pulled through. Job name, company name. Now, before you add the job name and company name, so on the blank item, the fixed price item, I would recommend going ahead and adding your entire team. This is the way that I would do it, especially if I'm managing a really large team. I would just click and then keep clicking until I've added every single person on the team to this blank item, because it's just the quickest and easiest way to do it. It means that everyone on my team can put time against one of these little straggler jobs if they need to. So I would do that first, and then once I've got one that's got everyone attached to it, I would go ahead and duplicate it. So I'm going to duplicate it. That means it's going to bring all my team members over, and then I am just going to go ahead and rename it at that point. So it would go ABC001, give it a job name, give it a company name, and then put in the amount of the remaining budget. So say this one's got $500 left. And then you just keep going like that. The benefit of this is that it's really in change management, right? So you could just say, let's not worry about that $500 that's left over on that job. But what we want to get our team into the habit of doing is logging their time accurately. So if we don't give them a place for them to log their straggly little bits of time from their to-do screen, they are either going to not log that time, they're going to try and go back into the previous tool and log it there, or they're going to come and ask you. And when you are managing a migration to a new tool, you want to kind of make things as smooth as possible and keep things as clear for your team as you can. So that's why I would recommend this. I also then just leave this job running. Sometimes you'll miss little straggly bits of budget, and someone will come to you and say, hey, where can I put my time on MOL 003? They're in their to-do screen. They haven't been able to find that job. It means that you can just go ahead and jump into that job and create an item for it that they can log time against really quickly and easily. I also will say to my team that say they do want to log time against MOL 003. I haven't set up an item on it against the live jobs migrated job, but they know it is for a straggly old job, or they come and ask me. I would go ahead and say, hey, just put your time against that job, but leave the item blank for now, and write me a note to let me know which job it is. So they can even go like at Brooke, MOL 003, say they used an hour on it. They can go ahead and log that. And then when I see that, I can pick it up and move it back to the item once I've created it. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll go ahead and show you how to do that now. How to move time from an item. So you can see there the extra hours tracked. I'm going to go ahead and rename this one. This is going to be my one for MOL 003. And this has a remaining budget of $120. Type it in there. I can then jump into the logged time, find that entry from Brooke, and all I need to do is drop down and select the item that it relates to. And then I can see the $120 is spent. Close that off. I would recommend also setting dates on these stragglers if you can. Mark them as complete if you can, just to keep on top of it for yourself. But just think of this live jobs migrated from XYZ tool with all the straggly bits of time where the items are actually jobs, and it's completely different for all your other jobs in Streamtime. Just think of it as a temporary situation. It's just a tool that's going to help you to capture that last bit of time and keep your team really familiar with using the to-do screen and logging their time as they would on any other job while you're in that transitional phase. Do you have any questions, Molly?
I'm good. It's just you and me left.
Oh, bye, Paul. Good.
Great. I hope everyone learned how to migrate Streamtime.
It's true. I hope so too.
We're here
to watch the recording.
Yeah, watch the recording. I've dropped the help article if anyone needs it. And we're here to help if anyone needs anything. Thanks, Brooke.
Bye.
Bye.